Hi there, thanks for joining me today. My name's Jo and I'm an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator and I'm from Norfolk in the UK. So today for my Monday Mashup I'm going to share a card with you which I'm actually making for my nephew's birthday. That is this week coming up. So I'm going to be using the stamp set called A Good Man. Now this has carried over from last year, but it is one of those that I find really useful. It's really good for sort of grandparents, for dads, but also for men who like to spend some time on the beach or sunning themselves in the deck chair. So I think it's quite a nice one to use, and I just thought it suited him really down to the ground. So he likes anything sort of nautical themed, which is where we're going with it today. So this is the one we're going to be using here. So we'll be using that in a little while, but first of all I want to tell you what you need. So I'm using a square card today. So this is our thick basic white, and this measures 29 centimeters by 14.5, and then scored at 14.5 to give us our square card. I don't use square cards very often, but I did one a couple of weeks ago and I thought this sort of loaned itself to a square, so that's what we're using. I'm also using a piece of paper from our In Good Taste DSP. Now thankfully this has carried over, it's such a useful one, and this is just going to give me my background on here. We're also going to need some real red cardstock and some more basic white cardstock, just normal basic white. And what I've done, I've pre-prepped some of these. I've cut a loop in red and also in the basic white. Now what I did was I actually layered these up together onto my cutting mat, and I have used the layering circles to cut them out. So I've done these just ahead of time just to save a bit of time really. But this is the largest size and this is the fourth size. So going from largest to smallest, this is the fourth one and this is the big one. Okay, so I've done those ahead of time just to save us a little bit of time. And also using the largest one, I wanted to cut another large white circle, and you'll see why in a little while. So the first thing I want to do is I want to actually create a porthole in the middle of my paper and my card. Now you can do it separately, but I'm going to actually do it at the same time just to save a little bit of time really, and then I can still use the piece I cut from the center. So I'm just gluing around the edges, and I'm going to glue sort of round here but leaving a circle in the center without the glue, just so that I can recover it once I've cut it out. So I'm just going to stick this onto my card front. Okay. Now using the fourth size, so that's the smaller of the two that I used, I'm just going to cut out the center of my card here. Okay, so what I've done is I've raised it up just very slightly because I wanted there to be a little bit of space down the bottom here. And as you can see, the two circles that I've cut out I can use for something else, so they don't go to waste. Okay, so now that's all stuck down. These are going to be stuck around here, but we're going to create a porthole. So this is our porthole, and then this is going to be like our life-saving ring around our porthole. Okay, so I've cut an additional white one. I forgot we needed one more, so that's the additional white one that we need. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut these apart, and then we're going to rearrange them onto one of our circles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually use my guillotine, but you can use scissors if you prefer. Now what I want to do is I want to cut this in half initially. So I'm just going to measure how wide it is. And I can see, I don't need to be too accurate, but I'm going to just sort of see the distance that it is here. So we're looking at about 7.5. So I'm going to do this by eye. I just want to kind of line it up as central as I can sort of get it. I can see sort of half and half. That's good enough for me. So I'm just going to cut that in half. Okay, and then what I want to do is I want to actually cut this one even further. So I'm going to cut it into thirds. So I think what I need to do is to literally just do it by eye and by scissors. So don't worry too much, but what we're going to do is try and keep our pieces together so that we know which ones are which. As I say, if you want to try and measure them, you can. I'm just doing it by eye, which I think will be okay, but we'll soon find out, won't we? So I'm just cutting it at the angle that the sort of circle follows. And there we go. So I know I'm going to have a full circle, okay? So what you could have done is you could have kept your white one whole and then just cut your red pieces, but then you get the two different layers, and what I wanted to do was have a solid circle. So I'm going to start off with adding some glue to my circle. I'm just going to do it half for now, and I'm going to start off with a red piece because I think that you'll be able to see obviously where I'm going better. So I'm going to stick this onto here. If we've got any extra white bits on the edges, I'd prefer it to be on the outside because then I can trim it. So try and get your center circle is where you want it to be, okay? And I'm going to work around in order. So I've got red and white. And by keeping these in order, it means that I know that they're going to fit my circle. So if we'd sort of cut them differently, then obviously it might not have done. Don't worry too much if the angle you've cut is not quite correct, because we're going to wrap this in a minute, so you're not actually going to notice if you've got any sort of funny little bits there. So don't worry too much about that. So I'm just adding some glue to the rest of the ring, and again I'm just working round in circles. And of course with the other piece you could make a second card, so keep the other pieces because obviously you can still use those. This underneath is just a guide, so don't worry too much if you're going off it a little bit. We're going to trim it in a second, but all being well, this white section should fit into the hole. Now if it doesn't, it could be just that where we've distorted the circle just very slightly, but don't worry about it too much. You can just sort of pop them underneath. As I say, we're going to wrap them. Okay, so I'm going to move those extra pieces out of the way. So this is going to be like our life buoy. So I'm just going to trim any excess that I have sticking out, and don't worry too much because this is going to be hidden. So don't worry too much if it's a little bit out. It doesn't matter. Oops. The white one doesn't matter so much in any event. Okay, so now that that's all stuck in place, I'm quite happy that we've got our ring. So now what I want to do is I want to add some linen thread to these joins. It's just going to add a little element of a decoration really to it. So what's going to happen is if I bring the card in, this is going to glue over the centerpiece here, so you can see how it's going to look once it's on there. That's actually very good because you can also see whether you've got any extra white bits that just need a little trim. So if you put it up against the dark background, you can see. I think that's okay. Okay, so now that I've done that, what I want to do, I'm going to use a little bit of double-sided tape. You can use whatever you're comfortable with, a glue dot, whatever really. And what I want to do is just on the back where the joins are, I want to put a little piece of tape. Okay, so now what I want to do is I'm just going to remove one at a time, and I'm going to take some linen thread. And you might just have to cut yourself a length off. In fact, I'm at the end of my roll here, so I'm just going to pull it off the roll. And what I want to do is I want to wrap it where it joins, the two colours join. And I'm going to wrap it about 4 times. So this is where I say it doesn't matter if your line isn't at quite the right angle, because we're going to cover it, so you're not going to see it. I think 4, maybe even 5, maybe. Make sure it's through your hole entirely before you try and wrap it again. Yes, I'm thinking 5 maybe. That's 4. Just gonna make sure they're up nice and close. And then 5. So that's my first one done. So now that they're done there, I'm just going to stick it down again at the back, and I'm going to trim it. Now you could, if you wanted to, try and run it across the back, but it's going to be difficult to sort of get it to hide unless you've stuck tape all the way round. So I'm just going to trim mine. Okay, so as you can see, I've now finished wrapping those. So we've got linen around all of those edges. So now what I want to do is to add some dimensionals just to the back of this. So I'm not sure we're going to take a whole one, so let's cut these in half. And I just want to stick these around the edges, but in the gaps from where we've done the linen thread. Okay, so this is now going to stick around my porthole. So it's up to you which way round you want to have it, whether you want a colour at the top, or I think with the red at the top looks quite nice. Okay, so that's my porthole. So now what I want to do is to create my what's going to be seen through the porthole, which is why we've got this bigger circle here we're going to stick inside. That's going to be decorated in a second. And then I'm also going to have my little man with the deck chair and some greetings as well. So let's start with our piece in the middle. So what I want to do is I want to just take some post-it notes because I'm going to mask this off in a second. And I'm using various inks. So I'm going to use, because I want this to be really summery, I'm going to use a little bit of Daffodil Delight, which is going to give us our sort of sunny area. And then I'm going to use Pool Party and Bermuda Bay for the sky and sea. So I'm just using normal sponges today, but you can use whatever you wish, whatever, you know, whatever your choice of sponging is. I just had these to hand today, so I'm just going to use them very lightly, first of all, over the background. So this is Pool Party, and again, as I say, I want it to be quite light. This is going to form part of my sky. Much better to build it up gradually, as I always say, just so that you don't add too much colour too quickly. It's very difficult to take away once that you've actually got it on there. You can see it's just gradually building up that sky. Right, now before it gets too dark, what I want to do is just to add a little bit of Daffodil Delight, and this is going to be the sun sort of effect coming onto. And I'm not too worried about going straight on with this, because I want it to be a bit of a hazy sort of sun. So probably a great deal of that is not going to show through the actual window. So I'm going to continue just with the blue now, just to add a little bit more colour. And then what I'm going to do is just to add a post-it note across my horizon. So I want my horizon to be probably about here. And then I'm just going to continue with the blue. Now I do want this to be darker because this is my sea, so I'm quite happy just to add colour onto here. And then what I'm going to do next is a little bit of Bermuda base. I don't want too much of this because this is quite a dark colour. And this time I'm going to start on the actual post-it note itself. And I just want to do this edge here just to add the horizon line. So it's just that little bit darker. And I can go back and add more. I'll check it in a moment. If I peel this back, you can see my horizon there. So actually, I'm going to leave that as it is because I think that looks quite nice as my sea and sky. Okay, so this is going to be stuck in here. So I want to position it so I can see what I'm looking for. So I want a little bit of sky, I want my horizon, and I want my sea. So I just want to make sure I get it straight. But I think that positioning is quite good. So I'm just going to open my card very, very carefully. And whilst that's in place, I'm just going to take a pencil and I'm just going to mark roughly the top so I can see where it's going to go. I don't mind if I move up just a millimetre just to cover that, but I just wanted to get it in the right place. So I'm going to glue my circle to the inside of my card. Want to make sure my horizon is straight, which I think that is. So there you can see through my porthole is my little horizon. Okay, so now what I want to do is to add my little man sitting on his deck chair. So that is the next thing. So I'm just stamping into onto normal basic white, and this is using Memento. So my little man on the deck chair. And I'm going to be using Stampin' Blends today, which is why I'm using Memento. And I'm actually going to stamp him twice because I might cut out some of the elements just to give him a bit more of a 3D effect. Okay, so I'm sticking with the colour theme. So I've got Real Red, I've got Bermuda Bay and Daffodil Delight. I thought they were quite nice sort of colours to sort of mix and match really. And I've also got some Petal Pink, which I'm going to use his skin. So I'm going to start with the skin because sometimes it's easy to work out sort of what bit's what once you've got the skin done. So there's his arms and his face. And I'm just adding some dark Petal Pink at this stage. And again, I'm just looking for where there might be some shadows. I don't think I've missed anywhere. And then I'm using the light one just to blend that through. You can, of course, do any skin tone that you wish. This is very much my nephew's skin tone. So I'm not doing this on the second one because I'm not going to be cutting out things like his legs, so it'll just be his clothes that I'm going to cut, if at all. Okay, so I think what we'll do is we'll have a nice red hat. So again, I'm starting with dark. That's my choice. Some people like to start with the light, so just use whatever you're most comfortable with. Okay, so the next thing I need to do is to cut out my little man. So I'm going to be using a craft knife and cutting mat. That's just my choice. I prefer to use that. You can use scissors. I'm going to cut out all the little elements in the middle so I can see through it. Okay, so I'm going to cut the rest out now with scissors. Okay, so this is my little guy that's been cut out here. Now I want to see whether I want to actually decoupage any of the elements. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to glue this flat, and then I'm going to raise his body so that he's leaning up against here. So it'll be sort of like flat in some parts, and then there'll be a little bit of support under his body. So I'm going to take again some dimensionals. And I can see that I want him to be supported just down this side here. So I'm just going to add my dimensionals there now. And then I'm going to glue carefully the other bits and pieces into place. So it's just his feet. And then if we pop him up here, this is going to be glued as well. So I'm just going to pop him down. His little... So he's got some support under here, just on this side here. And I think what I'm going to do is just pop a little bit under his arm as well, just to be on the safe side. Okay, so now that I've got to that point, I need to work out what I'm going to use. Well, I'm certainly going to use his hat, so I'm going to cut that out first. And notice I am cutting on the black lines for this so that I get a nice clean fit over the top. Okay, so I can glue that into place, and again just a little bit of dimensional just to add that lift. Okay, and I think I'm just going to do his shirt. So what I want to do is just to cut away on his legs, so cut away his shorts. And this one I won't put on dimensionals, I'm just literally going to stick it over the top, but it will just give a very slight layer which will make it look like his top's over his shorts, if that makes sense. Okay, so as I say, this is going to stick directly on here, but it just gives the illusion that it is just that extra layer. And what I'm going to do with this actually is just to glue directly onto my shirt. I know I'm gluing all over it, so I'm quite happy just to add some glue to there. And then I can position that in place perfectly. Okay, so that's my chappie, who's very happy. So now I want to think about my greetings, and there's two on here I'm going to use today. I'm going to use It's Your Day and Relax Your Way. I couldn't see what I was looking for then. So I'm going to start off with Relax Your Way. And what I'm going to do is to create like a banner here. So I'm just going to use a piece of real red. I don't need it very wide, but I'm not measuring it. I'm literally just sort of doing it by eye. I don't need to measure it entirely. And I'm going to use a little bit of my offcut of white to do exactly the same. So I'm going to stamp my greeting in black. And I'm going to stamp it in the middle of this strip here, because I just don't know how long I want it to be. And I'm actually going to stamp that again because I didn't get a very even stamp on that. That's better. So it's better just to, you know, make sure you get a nice crisp stamp on it. You've got two sides of card, so we use them all. Okay, so I'm going to use a little banner here, but I'm also going to use a little banner here. So I'm going to stick these down in a moment and then I will chop the ends. So these are going to go here. And the other little greeting I wanted was It's Your Day. So if I can find that one. So this one, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do it onto a piece of real red, and I'm going to heat emboss it and then cut it out with a circle. So I'm just going to make sure, because it's very warm here today, that I haven't got any oils or anything on my card. It's very warm here today. So I'm just going to heat set that now. Okay, so I'm going to use the same dice, the layering circles, because these are one of the most useful sets, I think, probably. So I can either cut it with a little bit of a scalloped edge, which might be quite nice. Yes, that's the one I'm going to go for. So I'll just cut that now. Okay, so that's now in place there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a couple of little banners of bunting across this top left corner. So again, I'm just using really offcuts of real red and white. So I'm just going to just trim this off, just so I know that I'm getting exactly the right, or the same size, I should say. So I've got got nice straight edges there. So I'm going to, I think at 1.5 centimeters, I'm going to make these. I think that would be about right. So I think I just need 2 red, and then I'll use a white one as well. Okay, so I'm just going to do straightforward square sort of banners rather than the traditional flag bunting. What I want to do is just to make sure that my flag ends are similar, so I'm just going to use one as a guide. Okay, so I've left them long at this stage. We'll trim them in a second once we know what sort of size we want. So I'm just going to have the 3 of them sort of going across this corner. So the first thing I'm going to do is stick these down, I think, just so we know where everything's sticking. There we go. So now for my bunting, I'm just going to make this very, very simple. I'm not going to, you know, try and create anything really different. So I'm going to cut myself a little bit of thread. In fact, I had a little piece, didn't I, hanging around? There we go. So what I want to do is just decide on my length. So I'm going to say about here. So again, you don't need to measure them particularly. I just use one as a guide, roughly. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie a knot on one end of my bunting. In fact, I'm going to give myself a little bit extra. I'm using a tiny bit there that I'll end up getting in a mess with. So I'm going to leave a tiny knot, and this little knot is going to be on display, and then I'm going to attach it up this end as well. So I want it to be thereabouts. That should do it. Okay, so I'm going to attach my actual thread first, because I think if I try and do it the other way around, we will get in a muddle. So I'm going to use glue ducts for this, and what I tend to do is to roll them. So I just use the end of my scissors and just create like a little sausage with the glue. And then I'm going to stick it onto the end of my thread. I think actually my knot needs to be a little bit further up. That's a bit better. So I'm going to do the same again. I'm just going to roll one of my glue dots so it creates a little sausage. And then what you can do is just push it onto your thread and your dot so that you can hide the dot entirely, but you don't really notice it's there. There we go. Okay, so we're going to have one here, one here, and then one in the middle. Okay. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hook that. It's a bit long, that one. Just going to hook that over the top of my bunting. And what that's going to do, it's going to hold our actual flag in place, but it'll also hold the ribbon in place. And I'm just going to add a little bit of glue just underneath. I'm going to do the other end first. So there we go. So that's our card for today. I hope you liked that. There's a few different things in there for you to have a go at. I loved making this sort of rubber ring, or life ring, I suppose we should call it, because it's just quite a cheerful thing to have on a card, I think, really. But it gives you that porthole look as well, which I think is really nice. And then inside, of course, you've just got your circle. And then I will just put a little greeting in there just to wish him a happy birthday. So I hope you like that today. Say it's an old stamp set in the fact that it's been here with us for a while, but it's one of those that deserves a little bit of a remake. So I hope you like that, and I will see you next week. Take care. Bye.